recently I was feeling unmotivated and tired all the time. It got to the point where I didn't want to do anything more than the bare minimum. Even the activities that I used to like a lot and did as a hobby are no longer good for me. That helped me understand why I had such low levels of motivation and energy. I learned a lot from this podcast to improve my situation, and decided to share my findings with you. So let's start. All your motivation on impulse. It comes from a neurotransmitter in your brain called dopamine. It leads to going after the things you need or want. You wouldn't even be able to move a muscle if it weren't for dopamine. Basically, you need it to function and survive, just like certain types of toys need batteries. Dopamine is a type of neurotransmitter, a chemical messenger in the brain that helps to regulate various functions such as movement, mood, motivation, and reward. It is produced in the midbrain and then released into different parts of the brain, including the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system. Dopamine works by binding to specific receptors on the surface of neurons in the brain. When dopamine is released into the synapse, the small gap between neurons, it can bind to these receptors and either excite or inhibit the firing of the receiving neuron. Depending on the specific receptor that dopamine binds to, it can have different effects on behavior and mood. Dopamine is often associated with pleasure and reward. When we engage in pleasurable activities, such as eating delicious food, having sex, or achieving a goal, our brain releases dopamine, which creates a feeling of pleasure and reinforces the behavior. This is why dopamine is sometimes called the feel-good neurotransmitter. However, dopamine also plays a role in other important functions, such as motivation, learning, attention, and movement. Low levels of dopamine have been linked to conditions such as Parkinson's disease, while high levels of dopamine have been associated with addiction and certain psychiatric disorders. There are several ways to control dopamine levels in the brain. One way is through medication, such as dopamine agonists or antagonists, which can either increase or decrease the amount of dopamine in the brain. Another way is through behavior, such as engaging in activities that naturally increase dopamine levels, such as exercise, socializing, or pursuing a hobby. However, it is very important to note that excessive or chronic stimulation of the dopamine system can lead to addiction or other negative consequences. So it is important to maintain a balance and avoid relying solely on external sources of dopamine. Likewise, you need dopamine to function. So to put it simply, dopamine is your battery. Now dopamine has a very interesting way of working. There is a baseline and a peak. For simplicity, let's say your baseline is 2 and your peak is 4. Let's say you eat chocolate or take a coffee, and your dopamine suddenly spikes 4. After a while your dopamine level needs to go down, and here's the fun part. After the peak, your dopamine level does not return to its previous baseline level of 2. It drops below 2. The bigger the dopamine spike, the bigger the drop afterwards. In other words, the higher the spike, the lower the dopamine level will be. You've probably been through this. As I explained at the beginning, dopamine is like a battery, it runs out. The more times you peak, the sooner you burn out. It's not just video games. Many of the things you love to do increase dopamine. Be it food, social media, chocolate, coffee, exercise, and so on. It doesn't matter what the activity is, or anything. If you keep doing this too often, you will lower your baseline, which will lead to a low level of motivation and willingness to do other things in your life. You don't have different dopamine batteries for different activities, you only have one universal battery. So if you want to have a healthy amount of dopamine stores, you need to work on reducing the number of things that increase your dopamine. In just a minute I'll give you tips and tools on how to do this, but first let me explain why dopamine works the way it does. There is an evolutionary reason behind it, and understanding it is important. Imagine you lived 10,000 years ago. You woke up and there was no more food or water. So you need to go get it, but there are dangers out there. Predators, poisonous animals, cold, storms. Still, you need to feel motivated to do this because your family is hungry. Dopamine is like your brain, it motivates you to tackle these challenges. So, you go, find some fruit, and collect it. Now you have food for your family. You found the reward, you feel the dopamine release, and it makes you excited and happy. If you enjoyed this video, I think you'll also enjoy a book called The Circadian Code. This book helped me a lot with the loss of weight and diet, and improved the quality of my sleep and exercise. Thanks for watching until the end, and I'll see you in the next video.